price is $75 per puck, man.
Music time's over.
Whoa! 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 Whoa!
I think this just might be my masterpiece.
K-Billy's Super Sounds of the 70s continues.
Are we ever going to do Kill Bill?
These words hypnotized the director. He went home, found the 30-page draft, and read it all night long.
We not only see she is a bride, but she's 8 months pregnant. Interior wedding chapel day, overhead shot. We hear step, step, step.
A few weeks later, at Uma's birthday party, he told her that the screenplay was a present. However, the 200-page final script appeared a year later.
Bill, it's your baby.
Cut to black screen. The fourth film by Quentin Tarantino.
The script for Kill Bill can be confidently called the anti-Jackie Brown.
You believe that shit?
Tarantino was not about to make the same mistake twice. Minimal dialogue, tons of action, a focus on young actors, and his typical anti-linear plot. As soon as they read the screenplay, Miramax offered him $40 million, and the project started up in April of 2001.
So the whole idea on Kill Bill was to test the limits of my talent.
After Uma Thurman, the cast was joined by Michael Madsen and Samuel L. Jackson, though Jackson's role was more of a cameo. Lucy Liu was invited to play the role of O-Ren Ishii after Quentin saw her in Shanghai Noon. He was so spellbound by her acting that he even rewrote a character for her who was initially meant to be purely Japanese.
The price you pay for bringing up either my Chinese or American heritage as a negative is I collect your fucking head.
It was harder to find an actor to play Bill. Tarantino invited Kevin Costner and Warren Beatty, but both refused. Costner is practically famous for saying no to Quentin's films, and Beatty lacked the desire to devote time to learning martial arts. Therefore, Quentin offered the role to a person who didn't need to learn martial arts at all. David Carradine became the perfect candidate. First of all, he had starred in many martial arts films.
You know, I did 11 Shakespearean plays.
Second of all, he had been in Mean Streets, one of Tarantino's favorite films. And third, he desperately needed to resurrect his career.
Just forget the past.
Well, the actors had been chosen and were ready to start shooting. The studio gave Quentin the green light, and he was already getting the film crew together, when in the middle of 2001, it became known that Uma Thurman was pregnant, and obviously could not start working. And though Harvey Weinstein insisted that Quentin find a different female lead, the director was unmoved. He answered Miramax in his typical way.
If Joseph von Sternberg is getting ready to make Morocco, and Marlene Dietrich gets pregnant, he waits for Dietrich.
Because of this, filming was delayed for a year, but the director didn't waste his time and began looking for the rest of his team. He invited his favorite stuntwoman, Zobel, who is behind most of the bride's crazy moves. The acting ensemble was joined by Gordon Liu, who played the squad leader of Johnny Moe's Crazy 88. And the teacher, Pai Mei. Initially, Quentin had planned on playing Pai Mei himself, and even completed 2 months of martial arts training, but changed his mind at the last second. True to his tradition, Quentin also invited actresses who needed a job, like Vivica Fox.
He was in the video store, and he saw Two Can Play That Game sitting on the shelf. And he said that it stopped him, and he said, wow, I haven't seen Vivica since really Independence Day. And he went, there's my Vernita.
And Daryl Hannah.
That's right. I killed your master. And now I'm gonna kill you too. What's cooler than cool? L Driver.
Later, Robert Richardson joined them, who had previously filmed Platoon, Casino, and A Few Good Men. And it's worth mentioning that he also filmed Natural Born Killers, and had often worked with Oliver Stone. In order to choreograph the fight scenes and train the actors, they hired Wu Ping Yuen, who had worked on The Matrix and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. The music was done by rapper RZA.
He asked me would I like to produce the soundtrack in the way that I produce Wu-Tang albums. I said, well, it's, whatever, I do, that's easy. I mean, that's like nothing. If that's what you want, consider it done.
And Robert Rodriguez, who required that Tarantino pay him a salary of exactly $1. Tarantino returned the favor when he insisted on the same deal for filming a piece of Robert Rodriguez's Sin City. But more on that later. Another interesting fact, Sonny Chiba was invited to play the role of Hattori Hanzo.
And I've been wanting to work with Sonny since I was a little kid. And Sonny Chiba, one of his coolest things that he did amongst all these great movies is he had a TV show. All right, the Japanese title of the show was Kage no Gunda. And each time they did a new show, he was a different Hattori Hanzo. It'd be like, Hattori Hanzo the first, and then he'd be Hattori Hanzo the second. And so I just continued that philosophy when I wrote my Hattori Hanzo. So he's Hattori Hanzo the 100th in Kill Bill.
You must have big rats. You need a Hattori Hanzo's stew.
Sonny is a legend of Japanese martial arts films.
That guy up there, it's Sonny Chiba.
The Oriental?
Yeah, the one in black.
Who in real life likes to make katanas and retired from acting after his role in Kill Bill. Only 5 months after Thurman gave birth to her son, on the 17th of June, 2002, filming finally commenced.
Action!
Yeah, cool.
When talking about the creation of this film, sooner or later all discussions lead to the House of Blue Leaves. Tarantino wanted to create the most epic action scene of all time, and was willing to do anything to achieve that vision. In order to completely avoid computer graphics, he insisted that the special effects team use a method from Japanese films, where they load the stuntmen up with condoms full of fake blood. Even the blood was chosen with deadly precision.
I don't want horror movie blood, alright? I want samurai blood.
In the end, more than 1,500 liters of fake blood was spilled. The scene became a trial for the whole film crew, and for the actors and the stuntmen. And instead of 2 weeks, the predicted time needed to shoot the scene, it took 2 months.
I've always considered action directors the greatest movie directors in the world. If you can do action well, then you're the greatest. Great job.
Its final version, by the way, was shown in the US and many countries in Europe in black and white, whereas in Japan, for example, it was shown in color. All this because the MPAA wanted to give it a rating of NC-17 instead of the typical R rating. One of the most random lines in the film is the comment made by the club manager with regards to Bud's hat.
How many times have I told you? Don't wear that fucking hat here.
The truth is that Quentin couldn't stand that hat, but Michael Madsen believed it was an essential part of his character's image, so the director edited the screenplay and immortalized his distaste.
That I want you to keep that shit kicker hat at home.
Also, in front of the club where Bud works, Butch's Honda Civic is parked, the same one which Jackie Brown drove. But Quentin didn't limit himself to references to his own films. Kill Bill became a paradise for Easter egg hunters. A scene worth special mention is the one where Daryl Hannah is depicting the pain of Elle Driver, clearly inspired by the suffering of Pris from Blade Runner, which she had depicted 20 years earlier. Another interesting scene was this one, filmed at a real Mexican brothel. All the extras seen on the screen were real members of this ancient profession.
Esteban was a pimp and a friend of Bill's mother.
And if you were wondering why Thurman didn't star in any more of Quentin's films, the answer surfaced only in 2018. On one of the last days of shooting, Uma asked to be replaced with a stunt double during this scene. However, no double was scheduled for that day, and the stunt coordinator had the day off. So Tarantino convinced her to do the scene herself, reassuring her that there was no danger involved. A few minutes later, the actress lost control of the car and crashed it into a tree. She received many injuries, including a concussion and knee injuries. It was this event which corrupted the chemistry between them. They only made peace later in 2018, when Quentin helped the actress get footage of this event, which she attached to the sexual assault charges in the Harvey Weinstein lawsuit. But that's a separate story altogether. Filming took 155 days and finished on the 3rd of March, 2003, 3 months later than the shooting schedule.
Yeah, we're way over schedule. And we're way over our original budget. But it's still the biggest motherfucking bargain in town. We're Miramax's competition to The Matrix. We're Miramax's competition to Die Another Day in Star Wars.
Kill Bill was supposed to be one composition lasting around 3 hours, but Harvey Weinstein suggested that Quentin split it into 2 parts. Tarantino happily agreed, since that gave him the chance to expand the characters' backstories and action scenes more.
This is what you get for fucking around with your cruisers! Go home to your mother!
Kill Bill Volume 1 premiered on the 29th of September 2003, and Volume 2 on the 8th of April the next year. Together, the pictures brought in over $350 million and became Quentin's most successful work to date. Of course, this time, he didn't expect any recognition from the Academy. The film wasn't nominated in a single category at the Oscars, but at least Uma Thurman was nominated for the Golden Globe for both volumes. The second time, she was joined by David Carradine. However, the main success of this trilogy was the fact that after a series of unfortunate events and failures, Tarantino once again regained confidence in his abilities.
I'm just imagining this, so shut the hell up.
Oh, it tells you something about your state of mind, don't it?
The year after that, he filmed a scene from Sin City to pay back his favor from Robert Rodriguez.
You better stop. You're making him mad.
Whatever you say.
Got the bouncing headlights, fanning out.
It was Quentin's first and last experience working with digital cameras.
Hey, let's have a big thank you and round of applause to our guest director today.
Special guest director.
The director is known for his faithfulness to film, And when asked how he felt about working with digital media, he always answered like this.
I think it's the death keel. I think it's the death rattle. Yeah, I do. And I also have even another whole aspect about it. You know, I've always believed in the magic of movies.
Yeah.
And to me, the magic of movies is connected to 35 millimeter. Because everyone thinks, you can't help but think, that when you're filming something on film, that you're recording movement. You're not recording movement. You are just taking a series of still pictures. There's no movement in movies at all. They are still pictures. But when shown at 24 frames a second, through a light bulb, it creates the illusion of movement. So thus, as opposed to a recording device, when you're watching a movie, a film print, you are watching an illusion. And to me, that illusion is connected to the magic of movies.
In 2005, in one of his interviews, Quentin let slip that he loved the show CSI. The producers of the show contacted him immediately and asked him to write and direct the final episodes of the 5th season, and Quentin gladly agreed.
Son of a bitch. He's screwing with us.
Afterward, Quentin returned to Austin. There, he presented the film Hostel by Eli Roth, which he had produced.
Don't speak. What the fuck do you want me to say? American.
At the same time, Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez were concocting a new project. I would go to Quentin's house, and he'd screen old trailers from the 70s.
Kiss the girls and make them die.
Like Vanishing Point, Rolling Thunder, some sexploitation and zombie stuff. Then he'd play a feature, all scratched up with missing reels and things. Then more trailers in a second feature.
He hasn't a 00 number, but he lives a doubly dangerous life.
It's a great experience to watch movies
A
this way.
cosmic nightmare that sends you into the incredible, berserk world of green slime.
I told Quentin, I always wanted to do a double feature. Hey, why don't you direct one and I'll do the other? And he replied, and we've got to call it Grindhouse.
Planet Terror and Death Proof. Only at the Grindhouse.
They chose two simple stories for the opening pictures, neither of which they had originally planned to film. The first part became Planet Terror, which Robert Rodriguez was in charge of, and the second, Tarantino's Death Proof. The idea, like the title, like the film, came to Tarantino out of fear of getting in an accident like this. The two parts of Grindhouse were shot at the same time, which allowed the directors to constantly bounce ideas off each other and share insights. The filming lasted from September to December of 2006. Interestingly, this was the first and last film in Quentin's career when he personally operated the camera. Maybe that's why there are so many feet.
Hell are my keys? Here they are.
Later, the directors combined their pictures and added a few fake trailers. These trailers were directed by their friends, Eli Roth,
Thanksgiving,
Edgar Wright,
Don't. If you are thinking of seeing this film alone, don't.
and Rob Zombie.
Werewolf Women of the SS.
Rodriguez made another one, but later Machete actually became a real movie.
Machete.
Also, because of the double feature aspect, large pieces of the dialogue were cut and most of the scenes were shortened. But the main difference between the two versions of the film was the private dance scene and the accident that followed. I really enjoy the fact that if you count the minutes, it actually hasn't changed that much. But it has changed things 180 degrees emotionally, because something as simple as showing that stuntman Mike is stalking the girls outside the restaurant. You actually see the pictures of the girls, and you know he's the villain. You know he's been there, and you still don't believe. That's what I love, the way the tone changes between the two movies. And I'm very proud of what I was able to do.
That while changing very little.
When he finished editing, Tarantino described Death Proof as,
Death Proof has got to be the worst movie I've ever made. And for a left-handed movie, that wasn't so bad, all right? So if that's the worst I ever get, I'm good.
Love that philosophy.
The film was released in April of 2007, and from the beginning faced a small problem, because most of the audience simply didn't know what a double feature was. They would start to leave the theater right after Planet Terror. However, the theater staff quickly remedied the situation by explaining to every person who tried to walk out that there was another movie in store. Unfortunately, this didn't help Grindhouse much. The director's idea failed in the States, and the distributors canceled similar showings in Great Britain. Instead, they released the films the way they would in countries which never had double features, as part of their cinema culture. First, they would release Death Proof, and then Planet Terror a month later. Although the director's idea flopped in the end, each picture broke even and received wonderful reviews, inasmuch as that is possible for B-movies. After that, Quentin started work on Django. Actually, on Sukiyaki Western Django, where he had a small role and was an advisor to the director, Takashi Miike. This film was a parody of spaghetti westerns, which are a parody of classical westerns, which aren't that serious to begin with. So there was no way Quentin was going to miss out on participating in something like that.
What can I say? At the end, I am an anime otaku at heart.
For 7 years, Quentin was haunted by the idea of returning to an abandoned but not forgotten project about the Second World War. Back in 2007, it was called Once Upon a Time in Nazi-occupied France. He began rewriting in January 2008 and finished in July. His draft became the foundation of the first 2 chapters, whereas the following chapters were newly created. In the process, the name changed to Inglourious Basterds, a reference to Enzo Castellari's film of the same name.
Get in the truck, you bastard.
But he didn't stop there. In this scene, Aldo presents himself with the real name of the director.
Scusi con me? Gorlami. Ancora una volta. Gorlami.
And for the duration of the scene, standing behind the main characters is the real Enzo Castellari.
It's good, ladies and gentlemen. That's a wrap on Enzo Castellari for the movie.
By the way, in the original title, Inglourious Basterds, there are 2 mistakes which Tarantino never explained. The English screenplay included a lot of dialogue in German and French, so Quentin asked his friend director Tom Tykwer to translate the German, and the French translations he entrusted to the actors. Later, having reunited with Lawrence Bender, who hadn't worked on his last film, he received a budget of $75 million and started choosing actors. First, he invited Harvey Keitel and Samuel L. Jackson, but you won't be able to see them in the movie, because Harvey voiced the officer talking to Hans Landa in Aldo Rain.
And bring them straight to me for debriefing. Is that clear, Lieutenant?
Yes, sir.
Over and out.
While Samuel was the narrator.
Shoshana has a collection of over 350 nitrate film prints.
They were joined by Eli Roth and Omar Doom, who had previously starred in Death Proof.
Dude fucking cut himself falling out of his time machine.
Omar Doom, by the way, met Quentin in '98 and began his acting career after following Quentin's advice. After working with him on the previous movie, Omar found out that the director often named his characters after people close to him.
Omar third most, so he'll be Donnie's assistant. I don't speak Italian. Like I said, third best. Just keep your fucking mouth shut.
The same privilege was granted to Julie Dreyfus, who had a whole family named after her.
All the Jewish families in this area have been accounted for, except the Dreyfuses.
The idea to invite Brad Pitt came to Tarantino while he was still writing the screenplay.
As I was writing the script, it went from, oh, Brad could be good in this, to Brad could be damn good in this, 2, Brad would be fucking awesome in this. 2, okay, now I need to get fucking Brad. Because if I don't, what am I going to do?
Lieutenant Aldo Rain. These are the bastards. Ever heard of us?
The set is church. He is God. The script is Bible. And no heretics allowed.
I think this just might be my masterpiece.
The need to hire bilingual actors brought Michael Fassbender, Daniel Bruhl, Melanie Laurent, and Diane Kruger to the project. People with whom Quentin had never worked with before.
That sounds good.
Also, we can't forget Mike Myers' cameo, which he viewed as a nod of respect to his parents who fought on the British side in the Second World War.
Mostly my father spoke, and my mother spoke of the unbreakable brotherhood of those who serve. He remembered the name of every single British soldier he served with, and for every name, a hilarious story.
Lieutenant Archie Hickox, reporting south. General Ed Fennick, Eddie's Hickox.
Nor Rod Taylor, who became famous because of his role in Hitchcock's The Birds. By the way, it was Taylor's last role ever in the movies.
I saw Quentin direct, and it was the most exciting, exhilarating thing I've ever seen.
Then, Martine Vodka was chosen to play Adolf Hitler, whose career had been filled with similar roles. Besides playing the Führer, he had played Joseph Goebbels twice.
Sie werden kein Wort darüber verlieren. Kein einziges Detail.
From there, the casting only got harder. First, though the role of Sergeant Donnie Donowitz had been written explicitly for him, Adam Sandler declined, preferring to star in the comedy Funny People. Oof. He was replaced by Eli Roth, who had previously been given a smaller role. The character of Babe Bukinski had to be removed altogether when Michael Madsen decided not to join the project. But the main problem was the search for the actor to play Hans Landa. Quentin needed an amazing actor who was fluent in English, French, German, and understood Italian. He auditioned hundreds of candidates, but no one fit the part. The director was distraught and thought that perhaps he had written a character that was impossible to play.
I literally had a moment where I didn't think I was going to find it. And I called the producers and said, look, if we can't find the right Landa, I'd rather just publish the script and do something else. And the producers, Lawrence and everybody, they were very cool about it. They didn't overreact. They go, well, then you know what? Here's the deal. Then we just spend, this week is just Landa, 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 Landa. And I can just tell you the day that Christoph came, walked in the room, sat down, and read 2 scenes. I remember thinking, and Lawrence was sitting right next to me, and go, we're making a movie.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
Later, Waltz became the first actor to win an Oscar for a Tarantino film. He also became the second, but more on that later. Calabash Meerschaum. No, that's not the name of one of the bastards. It's the name of the type of pipe that Hans Landa smoked. It became popular thanks to another imaginary sleuth, Sherlock Holmes. And it was undoubtedly a reference to the amazing abilities of the Standartenführer.
So you're the Jew hunter. I'm a detective. A damn good detective.
Shooting for Inglourious Basterds began on the 9th of October 2008 and lasted 120 days.
Take 5. Humiliation. Take 1 mark.
I am not dead. I just pretended. Now I'm gonna go after him and I'm gonna kick his fucking Nazi balls, okay?
You guys were great! Let's do it one more time. Let's go. Why? Because we love making movies!
The most dangerous scene to shoot was the death of Brigitte von Hammerschmark. Tarantino never liked the way film depicts choking scenes, because you can always tell that the actors are faking it. He wanted more reality and convinced Diane Kruger to do the scene for real, since he feared that Christoph Waltz would either press too hard or not hard enough. He decided to do the stunt himself. The director was supposed to choke Diane until she started to gasp for breath. As soon as the correct facial expression appeared, Tarantino was supposed to yell cut. Thankfully, it only took one take. And though the actress was unconscious for a few seconds, she completely revived several minutes later. Also, this scene became the most subtle of the director's cameos, though he already appeared in the film as the first Nazi whose scalp the bastards collected. Inglourious Basterds premiered at the Cannes Film Festival on the 20th of May, 2009. Right before it was released, its running time was 180 minutes, and certain scenes look completely different. So Sally Menke, together with Tarantino, shorted the film by 30 minutes 2 days prior. Any person who has ever edited footage, especially shot on film, knows that it is an incredibly underrated achievement. The picture was a box office hit, making more than $300 million worldwide, and received 8 Oscar nominations. 15 years later, Quentin was considered again for the awards for Best Screenplay and Directing. The movie was also nominated for Best Picture, Cinematography, Film Editing, Sound Mixing, and Sound Editing. But the only one who celebrated a victory at the 82nd Academy Awards was the aforementioned Christoph Waltz.
There's no way I can ever thank you enough, but I can start right now. Thank you.
Later in 2010, Sally Menke, at the age of 56, died from heart stroke. Their relationship is difficult to describe in words. It was a real symbiosis. Tarantino believed that Sally's work on his films was the work of an equal partner.
We work very intensely together, and it's kind of amazing that we still like each other. If I was with my husband that long, I don't think I'd like him that much.
Quentin often said that she was the only person in the whole world capable of seeing the order in his chaotic vision, and called Menke his only full-fledged partner.
Hi, Sally.
Hi, Sally. Hello, Sally.
I think Sally's with her. Hi, Sally.
Hey, Sally, how's it going?
Sally, how are you?
Good. A little lonely, are you? Mike says hello.
Hi, Sally. Cut.
That was true.
Sally. Hi, Sally.
All this time, we've avoided the subject of Quentin's personal life. Why? Not long ago, he gave journalists a perfect description of his stance on the subject.
I'm not saying that I'll never get married or have a kid before I turn 60, but I've made a choice so far to go on this road alone because this is my time to make movies.
But it's worth mentioning that over the years he had flings with Mira Sorvino, Sofia Coppola, Shar Jackson, and Julie Dreyfus. But he met his one and only in 2009, while on a promotion tour for Inglourious Basterds. In Israel, he met Daniela Peek, daughter of the famous musician Zvika Peek. 2 weeks later, they appeared on the red carpet in Los Angeles as a couple. But several months later, Peek and Tarantino parted ways. Not long after, in an interview, Quentin admitted that Daniela was the woman with which he could imagine his future. But right now, his career was more important. One might have thought that those were just nice words to placate his ex. But Tarantino wasn't lying. And in 2016, they renewed their relationship and got engaged. But as Tarantino says, while he's making movies, there will be no wedding. But let's return to 2009. The last stop on the promo tour for Inglourious Basterds was Japan, where after yet another press conference, he wandered into a local music store. While perusing the endless shelves, he stumbled upon a compilation of spaghetti western soundtracks. He just happened to be working on a book at the time devoted to the reviews and directing of Sergio Corbucci, creator of the movie The Con Artists, who rose to fame thanks to the spaghetti westerns like Django.
Django, have you never loved?
It was nothing short of a sign from the universe. He bought the CD, returned to his hotel room, scanned a few pages of his draft, turned it on, and spent the rest of the night writing the introduction to his next film.
Who's that stumbling around in the dark? State your business or prepare to get winged.
He spent the next 2 years working on Django Unchained. The final version was ready in May of 2011, and by November they had begun casting. It started off with Christoph Waltz rejecting the role written just for him. Dr. King Schultz, the similarity of the character to the actor himself deterred him, but Quentin insisted and said he just wouldn't take no for an answer. Christoph gave in, but on one condition. His character wouldn't do anything bad on screen. Quentin agreed by sending Waltz a handwritten note which read, of course, Mein Herr, Q.
Oh, very well.
From the beginning stages of the script, Tarantino had planned to invite Will Smith to play Django. He was the only candidate, but Smith declined. Later, he explained that he hadn't felt that the character was the lead role. He was more of a sidekick for Dr. Schultz. Otherwise, it would have been Django pulling the trigger in the final scene. Tarantino countered that in that case, the murder would have been nothing but revenge, whereas a white man killing a white man was foreshadowing the coming Civil War and end to slavery. And though Smith called the script brilliant, and not once, he never regretted his decision. After that, Terrence Howard, Idris Elba, Chris Tucker, Tyrese Gibson, and Michael K. Williams all tried out. But as soon as he met Jamie Foxx, he forgot about the others. When asked why he chose Jamie, Quentin said he was the cowboy. Forget the fact that he has his own horse. And that is actually his horse in the movie. He's from Texas. He understands.
He's gonna let me pick up my own clothes. D-J-A-N-G-O. The D is silent.
Calvin Candy was also written with another actor in mind. Tarantino didn't name names, but he didn't hire that actor because he realized he was just too old for the role. That's a problem I have. I'll be thinking about somebody and not take into account that I'm thinking of them from 20 years ago. But according to rumor,
I love rumors.
The role was most likely reserved for John Travolta, though we're certain that no one was upset with Tarantino's final choice.
And then we got nothing more to talk about.
The only person there were no problems with was...
Yeah. Hello, my ass. Who this nigga up on that name?
After that, the project was joined by Kerry Washington, Jonah Hill, Bruce Dern, Walton Goggins, and many of Quentin's old friends. And of course, Quentin's cameo.
A little doing them off for you black boys to play with.
And his other cameo.
So how about no bags this time, but next time we do the bags right, and then we go full regalia.
While preparing for the role during a writing session, Christoph Waltz dislocated his pelvic bone.
Well, you know, the riding the horse wasn't that much of the challenge. The falling off was.
Quentin was afraid that he would have to delay shooting, but after rereading the script realized that he only had to change a few lines to move Schultz from the back of a horse to a carriage bench. In the end, it only added to the film.
Calm yourselves, gentlemen. I mean you no harm. I'm simply a fellow weary traveler.
The picture received a record-breaking budget for Quentin, $100 million. And on the 25th of January 2012, they started shooting.
Sun comes up and rises high. It's so hot, it's gonna make me cry. Oh Lord, oh
very first day, the director had to have an enlightening conversation with Jamie Foxx.
I'm reading my lines like, yeah, and he said, cut. Can I talk to you for a second? Close the door. What the fuck is that? I said, what you mean? Listen, all of this shit, you have to be a fucking slave. You come in with your fucking Louis bag and your fucking Range Rover and your fucking Jesser. I'm so fucking, you're not Jim Brown. He's a fucking slave. And then he becomes the hero. But lose that shit. Door swings open, he walks out.
What's your name?
Django.
Leonardo DiCaprio, on the other hand, needed no enlightening. You can learn more about how his scenes went by watching his biography.
A lot of lies said around this dinner table here tonight, but that you can't believe.
Another interesting cameo was Franco Nero's, who played the lead role in the original Django.
What's your name?
Django.
No one will hurt you anymore as long as you're with me.
Also, we can't forget a typical Tarantino film moment.
What were we talking about?
In the beginning, James Remar's character dies at the hands of Dr. Schultz. In the end, James Remar's other character kills Dr. Schultz. Shooting lasted for over 5 months, and the amount of footage filmed was mind-blowing. When the film's producer Harvey Weinstein first saw how much Tarantino had shot, he wanted him to take the proven route and split the movie in 2. But Quentin preferred to shorten the film almost by half. Scenes that didn't make the cut included the backstory of D'Artagnan's hunters, and some scenes with Zobel. Also, the dialogue between Steven and Django when they arrived at Candyland was before the scene where Schultz meets Broomhilda. This scene was Jamie Foxx's favorite one, which didn't make the final cut. But the biggest loss was a whole plot line where Kerry Washington's character was sold by a slave owner, played by Jonah Hill.
But nobody can see. So it'd be nice to see.
The actor had around 15 minutes of screen time, but Quentin wasn't pleased with the outcome, so he gave Hill a small role in the Ku Klux Klan and invited Sacha Baron Cohen to replace him. But the reshot episode was cut anyways.
Goddamn time wasting sons of bitches.
The editing dragged on for 4 months, mostly because Tarantino couldn't work as well as when he had Sally Menke by his side.
I've been really melancholy these last few days, because this is usually the time where she would kind of be running the show, this last little bit. So I'm particularly missing her now. I have to be more responsible for my own movie.
Menke's place was taken by Fred Rasky, who had previously worked as Sally's assistant on Kill Bill, and was the film editor for the first, The Fast and the Furious. During the first stage of writing the music for the picture, Quentin had a serious argument with Ennio Morricone, who was upset with how the director had used his compositions in the film. And vowed never to work with Tarantino again. However, 3 years later, he broke his vow, and for the first time in his career, at the age of 86, won an Oscar.
This is the first Oscar and 6th nomination for Ennio Morricone.
The premiere of Django Unchained was in New York on the 11th of December 2012. The events that followed can only be compared to the success of Pulp Fiction. The picture earned more than $424 million and became the most profitable of Quentin's career. It also attracted many accolades. Christoph Waltz, for his role as Dr. Schultz, received a Golden Globe, a BAFTA, and the aforementioned Oscar. Waltz set a record, by the way. His character has 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 17 seconds of screen time. This is the longest of any actor who received an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor.
Astonishing.
Quentin was also not forgotten. For the screenplay of Django, he received a Golden Globe, a BAFTA, a Caesar Award. And 18 years after Pulp Fiction, he took the Dolby Theater stage once again to receive his prize.
Thank you very much. I love this. I love the competition. You guys are all wonderful. Peace out.
The Chinese premiere closed out the promo tour for Django Unchained. Quentin returns to Austin, where he begins work on a new project. Despite convincing from the Weinstein brothers, he refused to make a Django sequel. But having fallen in love with the main character couldn't get him out of his head. So he decided to write a few stories and publish them in softcover. Some typical Pulp Fiction, so to speak.
So fucking funny. Every goddamn thing.
The first one he started writing was The Rugged Django in White Hell. But the further he got with the story, the more he realized that the character just didn't fit the narrative canvas. So Quentin changed the character and turned the short story into a screenplay.
Got room for one more?
By the end of the year, he had the first draft of a script on his hands entitled The Hateful Eight. It needed some serious work since usually Tarantino's final copy was always the fourth or fifth rewrite. But before doing the final edit, he wanted to make sure he had the support of 6 people with whom he wanted to make the movie. The names of 2 of them remain a mystery, but the others were Michael Madsen, Tim Roth, Bruce Dern, and the producer of Django, Reggie Hudlin. It was one of these men who was responsible for the leak, which led to the screenplay being published online.
If I don't hear a confession from one of you motherfuckers quick, fast, and in a hurry, I'm gonna pour this whole pot of coffee down that bitch's goddamn throat.
This was an unprecedented event for such a small circle of confidants. Quentin was furious. He gave an interview where he announced that he wouldn't be filming the movie. Later, believing that Reggie Hudlin was responsible for the leak, he filed a lawsuit against him. But if the director dumped the film, how did it end up being shot?
How so?
Yep, 6 months later, when Tarantino had cooled down, he decided to host an open reading in Los Angeles with the actors he had planned to hire. The event had 1,200 people in the audience, who on average had paid $200 for a ticket. They were not disappointed. In the end, the audience gave a standing ovation, and the actors began to convince Tarantino to film it after all. Quentin was so touched that right then and there, he declared that his 8th film would be Hateful Eight.
I fucking knew it!
The cast was mostly made up of Tarantino's friends for whom he had written the roles.
You're writing your life story.
You bet I am.
Am I in it?
You just entered.
The choice of Kurt Russell for the role of John Ruth the Hangman was an interesting one. Tarantino mentioned several times that Hateful Eight only referenced 2 films, Reservoir Dogs and The Thing.
There's a storm hitting us in 6 hours. We're gonna find out who's who.
And Kurt Russell was the lead role in the second. The rest of the connections are easy to follow. The heroes don't trust each other while being trapped in a closed space because of a snowstorm. Russell's character is paranoid and disarms the rest of the characters.
Put those torches on the floor and back off.
Like I said, nothing personal, just a precaution.
And of course, Ennio Morricone, who composed the music for both films. By the way, because he was pressed for time, he had to give Tarantino unused music which he had written for The Thing, but which had been gathering dust on the shelf for more than 30 years.
This is a once in a lifetime thing, and I'm just happy to have a front row seat.
Not counting a few small roles in Demian Bashir and Channing Tatum, the main role of casting was to find an actress for the role of Daisy Domergue.
You don't know nothing about this fella here.
Nope.
Don't even know her name.
Nope.
Rumors tied the role to Jennifer Lawrence and Uma Thurman. But Quentin did as he had often done in his career. He chose an actress whose glory days seemed to have passed.
Hey, little apple blossom.
Jennifer Jason Leigh.
A lot of times, this town or this business really only looks at your last 3 projects. Quentin is the exception to that. He looks at your whole body of work. He would talk to me about moments ahead in flesh and blood, as though they were yesterday.
Hush, soldier. Don't tell them. I beg of you.
He's that thorough, and that's just how his brain works. When he looks at you, he doesn't see just what you did the last 2 years.
It's symbolic that a few months before casting, Jennifer had attended the reading of the script as an audience member.
That's why this chapter is called Domergue's Got a Secret.
Before filming began, Quentin insisted that the movie be filmed on some incredibly rare equipment. They used cameras and lenses which had been used to film Ben-Hur. The exact lenses. They were restored and tested over 6 months to make sure they were ready to be used in extremely cold temperatures. Hateful Eight became the 11th film in the history of cinematography to be filmed in Ultra Panavision, which has an aspect ratio of 2.76 to 1.
Ultra Panavision. When you absolutely, positively got to wow everyone in the room, except no substitutes.
On the 8th of December 2014 at a ranch near Telluride, Colorado, they began filming Hateful Eight.
Considering there's a blizzard going on, whole lot of fellas walking around, wouldn't you say, Major?
Without leaving Colorado, the film crew shot the exterior of the haberdashery and the panoramic views of the San Miguel Mountains, while the rest of the 3.5 months of filming were done in a pavilion in Los Angeles, outfitted so that the temperature inside was never above 35 degrees.
You okay, OB?
I'm fine. I'll be fine. I just need to get warm.
When guitarists hear the story connected to a scene shot in one long take, where Daisy Domergue performs the song Jim Jones at Botany Bay.
For life, Jim Jones, I sentence you across the stormy sea.
Their blood runs cold. Jennifer was playing on a priceless antique 1870 Martin, on loan from the Martin Museum. There were a few copies at the set, but
You're never going to cut a scene until Quentin says cut, and Kurt thought it must be a dummy guitar. I don't think Quentin knew that it was the vintage instrument either. The scene was going exactly the way he wanted it to go, and he wanted to play one scene in the movie in real time without a cut, in one long take.
Music time's over.
Kurt felt terrible. He had no idea. When he found out, his eyes literally welled up.
this explains Daisy's frantic reaction, since this moment was captured in the final version of the picture. And though the insurance covered the cost of the damage, representatives of the Mott Museum said they would never again allow one of their guitars to be used for a film.
No! Yeah! Shut up!
The last scenes were filmed on the 5th of April 2015, after which Quentin spent 6 months working on editing the picture. Simultaneously, the Weinstein Company began preparing for the release of the widest formatted film that had been released in the last 60 years. They searched for, bought, and restored 70mm projectors in 100 cinemas across the country, and invested $10 million in the process. This was a move unheard of in the prime of the IMAX era. The premiere was planned for the 25th of December. Four days before that, Tarantino got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and everything seemed to be going great.
He's all about making films that make you happy, because we went to the movies to be happy.
The first showing of The Hateful Eight was supposed to be at the legendary Los Angeles Cinerama Dome. It was one of the few theaters in the whole world equipped for this type of film, and had a deep symbolic meaning for Quentin, who had been going to it since he was a child. But then...
Basically, and I'm not talking about the whole country, but I'm talking about one theater in particular.
You sound nervous about this.
Well, that's a big fucking deal.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
We were going to play at the Cinerama Dome on the 25th. We were going to open there and play there exclusively for 2 weeks. And Star Wars was going to play the 2 weeks before us. And I grew up in Los Angeles, so I think of the Cinerama Dome as a real big deal, and imagine seeing it at the Cinerama Dome.
Means something to you.
Exactly.
Right.
Disney, who owns Star Wars, decided, well, you know what? Maybe we want to play throughout the entire holiday season. We're going to go to the Cinerama Dome and say that they can't honor their contract with us to show The Hateful Eight. And the ArcLight people that own the Cinerama Dome said, no, you can't do that. We have a deal. As of yesterday, Disney came to the ArcLight people and said, no,
Wow.
You are going to play Star Wars in the Cinerama Dome for the entire holiday season. And if you don't, if you honor your deal with the Hateful Eight, we will not allow you to have Star Wars, the biggest movie in the world. We will not allow you to show it at any of your ArcLight movie theaters. They are going out of their way to fuck me.
Quentin, in all fairness, I must say there's nobody from Disney here to refute that or to say.
No,
that,
but as far as
I understand how you feel.
As far as I'm concerned, and let all the entertainment reporters call up Disney as of now and ask for their comments about their extortionist practices.
Listen, Bob, I'm talking to Bob Iger. I don't give a shit about this theater. Quentin's a weirdo. Sorry, Quentin. The fucking kid, they got the stupid 70 millimeter. They got all that shit that he cares about. He just wants to show his goddamn movie there. You're sitting on top of the world. You got Star Wars. What do you need this? Do me a favor, Bobby, for me. And you know, we've had many private conversations. I fucking partied with this guy over at Jimmy Kimmel's. Be a gracious man. I want Quentin to show this new movie. He's worked his ass off. He wants the equipment. Hateful Eight. Would you do it for me? All right? Christmas. It's Christmas, for Christ's sake.
In the full version of this interview, Quentin was so touched by Stern's help that he teared up.
You're moved to tears over this.
No, that's very touching, man. I really appreciate it.
But the story didn't have a Disney happy ending. Bob Iger didn't budge, and the premiere at the Cinerama Dome was bumped to 2 weeks later. Tarantino was enraged. He promised he would never ever work with the company ever again, which had made quite a lot of money from Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill since Disney owned Miramax. They fucked me over, and I made them a lot of money for Pulp Fiction. And that really is a bad way to treat a former employee who has worked very well for them. Yes, many may think it's not a big deal, but for a person who treasures details and devoted his whole life to film, it was a big deal, which is why the conflict got so much attention. Unfortunately, that was not the last hit Quentin received. The close circle which had leaked the script came full circle when a few days before the premiere the film was uploaded to the internet.
No one said the job's supposed to be easy.
No one said it's supposed to be that hard, neither.
So the movie going up against Star Wars, The Revenant, and Joy made a heroic effort when it collected $160 million worldwide. Nonetheless, it was considered a failure. 2 months later, at the Academy Awards, the picture was only nominated in 3 categories: Best Cinematography, Best Supporting Actress, and Best Soundtrack.
Grazie.
After the promo tour for Hateful Eight ended, Quentin began developing an idea that had been at the front of his mind for the last 8 years. The movie would tell of Los Angeles in the 70s. I've been working on this script for 5 years, as well as living in Los Angeles County most of my life, including in 1969, when I was 6 years old. I'm very excited to tell this story of an LA and a Hollywood that doesn't exist anymore.
It really is a Los Angeles movie, and it deals with a couple of lead characters, but a lot of wild supporting characters that kind of make a blanket throughout the town.
After the Harvey Weinstein scandal, Quentin, who had worked with the brothers during his whole career, had to look for a new studio. He sent the screenplay to all the main players in Hollywood except for Disney. Later, it became a real bidding war that was eventually won by Sony. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was released on the 26th of July, 2019. But more on that in the next video. The next plans of the director were shrouded in mystery. He was often mentioned in connection to the then unnamed project taking place in the Star Trek universe. Tarantino had mentioned his love for the original TV show several times, and said that he would gladly film his own interpretation. If before that had been speculation, now the project was announced. It will be co-produced by J.J. Abrams, filmed by Sony, and Mark L. Smith, who wrote The Revenant, will write the screenplay. Quentin's main condition was an R rating which wouldn't be lowered. Not under any circumstances. I guess that's about it. Quentin Tarantino is one of the most faithful fans of the cinema that shaped him, and has been wowing us with his brilliant style for the past 30 years. For him, it's not a job, it's a calling.
If you truly love cinema with all your heart and with enough passion, you can't help but make a good movie.
room for one more?